Are we going? Okay. Well, Lila, you can't be part of this video right now. I guess you could. Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training. Yes, it's been a week. It's another Tuesday again. That's really how I count my days at this point. Not that I'm not having fun and being productive. But yeah, when Tuesday rolls around, I know because it's time for another Autism Fitness Tuesday training video. And all of that to say that in this edition, we're going to be talking about communication and some of the little big things that, of course, can make a tremendous difference in the way that you coach and have effective communication with your autism and neurodivergent life skill athletes. Of course, before I get started, please definitely subscribe, and then share this with people for whom it might make a difference. If you are running fitness or adapted physical education programs for the autism and neurodivergent population, this is going to be a veritable goldmine for you, because one of the biggest questions or set of questions that I get around autism fitness and our strategies, our concepts, the thing we use, is communication, which has a direct impact, beneficial or otherwise, on motivation and engagement and even decreasing anxiety during a fitness session. So when we talk about functional communication, there are some general guidelines. There are definitely going to be some things that are specific to your own athletes. Of course, they're going to have their own personalities. They're going to want to talk about or not want to talk about certain things. They may be really in depth with a particular topic. You can probably start rattling them off in your head right now. Trains, planes, vehicles, movies that you have to recite the lines of, or print out a question sheet that you generated via AI so that you can ask 37 different questions of your athlete because they requested it during a session. Just saying, these type of things come up. But in general, there are also some really important guidelines or best practices that we want to follow in order to provide the most accurate and effective communication for our athletes first. And the first big one, and this is one that we cover extensively in the Autism Fitness Pro Certification, is limiting or eliminating completely overcoaching. Overcoaching is when we are using too much language to describe the way an athlete is supposed to perform a particular exercise. With a squat, for example, which is a definitively technical exercise, we can set up the athlete by saying, okay, you're going to do a squat. So first, get your feet shoulder width apart, and then you're going to sit back to the box, but do it slowly and make sure that you're looking forward. As soon as this just deluge of verbal information comes forth at the athlete, this can be anybody, but particularly for our autism and neurodivergent population, you'll notice, if this has happened before, that it's ineffective because there's too much information, new information, different information, information that may not connect, that is coming towards your athlete. And so their response time or their ability to engage is going to be lessened. Right? So it is really important. And this is, again, something that we train and retrain in the autism fitness curriculum, is that we don't want to load up the athlete with too much information given verbally. It impedes our ability to coach effectively, and it certainly impedes the athlete's ability to respond with their best performance of that particular exercise, right? And this is not just related to some of our athletes, but nearly all of our athletes, because this extends, again, beyond the neurodivergent population. And these are great tips for the neurotypical population as well. The second key here is something that, while it may work for many neurotypical individuals, it's something that is often a hindrance to successful performance of the exercise for our autism population, and that is using analogies in our language, and using them related to a particular performance of an exercise. So I'll give an example. So if we have our athlete doing an overhead press and they're going too quickly, we can say there are two things here. We can say, oh, slow it down, go slow like a sloth, or what's something else that goes slow? Go slow like a lumbering rhinoceros. But the issue is that our athlete may not connect that terminology or what we're trying to evoke there with slowing down their eccentric movement or that lowering movement on that press. So that they may not be making the connection. Oftentimes that's difficult for our autism and neurodivergent athletes to connect the analogy with the performance of that exercise. So the do this like, or even when we're talking about prepositions like in, on, under, and then these and then different terminology like faster or slower. So when we're using verbs, faster or slower relative to what? So we need to make sure that the athlete has an understanding of, if we're talking about fast or slow, faster or slower, yeah, but what is the comparative there? So sometimes the language that we may feel like is bedrock and something that is going to work really well is not going to land necessarily for our athletes. In our autism fitness curriculum, we have a process that is highly effective that we call label, demonstrate, do, and cue. You get this as an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, but the purpose behind it is to override and retrain ourselves as coaches to not use a lot of language, to not use a lot of analogies where they don't make sense, to not rely on the athlete necessarily and immediately understanding faster or slower or pause or any of these more abstract terms. Rather, we coach directly towards what the athlete is doing and provide them with feedback that is going to be effective for their best performance right now. Now, another communication, I won't even say issue, another communication thing that comes up oftentimes is when we have an athlete who is talkative. So we have athletes who may not have, they may have a lot to say, but it may not necessarily be verbally. And then we have some athletes who are using a lot of language all throughout the session. Now, the first rule here, if we have an athlete who's using a lot of language, is very simple. Are they focused? Are they performing at their current best level of ability with each exercise? If they are and they're still talking, great. However, sometimes if you've noticed, and you probably have, the athlete or the individual is doing a task, in this case exercise, but it could be anything, and they're talking and talking, and maybe they're getting distracted, or it is inhibiting or getting in the way of their performance of that exercise. So they're doing squats and the first 2 or 3 repetitions look great, and then they start getting into whatever that topic is, and you notice that they're getting distracted. So there are a couple different ways that we can go about doing this. Now, one of the ways, if we're engaged in that conversation, we might slow down our reaction to, or our communication in that conversation with that athlete. So I might start pausing and limiting my engagement until the athlete completes those next 7 or 8 repetitions of that squat. The other way, if the athlete is getting really distracted, they're continuing to talk, but all of a sudden we see that performance is dropping, is we can remind them, hey, I'd love to continue this conversation. When you finish with your squats, you've got 7 repetitions left, then I'm happy to talk about this particular subject. So rather than a hard no and using things that are going to be not only ineffective but disrespectful to the athlete, like, oh, you need to stop talking right now, or just saying to them, you need to focus. We don't want to rely, and we don't want to utilize the you need to language. Number one, again, disrespectful to our athletes. And number two, also fairly ineffective. We want to engage with and develop a really positive relationship with our athlete. And in order to do that, I want to know what they want to talk about. I want to be engaged in that conversation. However, we don't want that to take precedence over the performance of that exercise. So learning the appropriate times to have those communications about whatever video game it is or whatever movie it is or whatever video game movie it is can be highly productive. And the timing here is everything. So I want to allow the information that the athlete is giving me time to resonate, and I want to be able to act on that. And then I want the athlete to be able to process the information that I'm giving them as well, without being overwhelmed and with it being fully cognizant of their levels of capability and their levels of understanding as well. So ultimately, communication with our athletes is key, not only to developing a rapport, not only to them having an accurate understanding of the expectations and what's going on, but really to their best performance in the exercise as well. And maybe you've gotten frustrated in the past. If you have, leave that in the comments below. I'd love to know, with some certain type of communication that's not landing for that athlete, or you tried something and it didn't quite work. I'm here to help. I'd love to help out with this, because this is something that is critical to the success of your fitness or adapted PE program. So leave all your communication questions. Fitting enough, communicate to me about your communication with your athletes in the comments below. I'd love to know, and definitely share this video if it makes sense for someone in your circle who really needs those extra nudges about effective communication, whether it's in the fitness setting or not. But specific to the fitness setting, it's really important that we establish these practices in order for us to get the most out of our coaching and for our athletes to get the most out of their programs, because fitness is a life skill and we want to bring it as effectively and as successfully to our autism and neurodivergent population as we can. Thank you. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. Appreciate you watching, and I'll be back for another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training. If you have a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future edition, leave that in the comments below as well. Helps the algorithm. I guess I know what that means now. Anyway, great. Thanks for watching.